Welcome to iHeart Geek.
Okay, so no, you're right. There is more to life than politics.
Yes.
Like Iron Claw,
Yes.
which welcome to iHeart Geek.
Oh, we're live.
We're live.
We're doing it live.
We're going for it. We'll do it live.
Do it live, damn it. I'll write it, you do it. Or you write it, I'll do it.
I'll do it live. I'll do it live. Okay. That is just a great piece of television. Anyway, so I'm Dub. I'm here with Chris, and we are talking about a movie that we just saw called Iron Claw.
Yes.
Now, there was a couple other people we were trying to get on here as well, but schedules happened. Blah. Anyway.
Boo.
Boo.
Now it's just the two of us now, Dub.
I think we're alone now.
Just the two of us.
Oh, we're going to get sued for something, I'm sure.
Don't sue us.
That wasn't that entertaining to get sued over, I don't think. So we are talking about the movie Iron Claw. Now, if you haven't seen Iron Claw, what are you doing? You need to stop and go watch Iron Claw. Now, I'm going to ask you this question, Chris, just coming off the top. Do you have to be a wrestling fan to enjoy Iron Claw?
No, you
Does
do
it
not.
help?
First, you don't have to be a wrestling fan to enjoy this movie. This movie is a drama that happens to have wrestling in it as its main backdrop.
And not that much, honestly.
No, it's there to kind of propel the story because of, and I'm sure we'll get into it briefly. I was blown away. Like I for some reason decided to watch this at 11 a.m. at the time of this recording, and I'm like,
Woo!
yeah, this will be fun. It was
You're dealing with emotions right now.
Yeah, it's very fresh, and I am surprised that this was not nominated for more awards or any awards, because
It really should have been.
Yeah.
And I say, and let's take the wrestling out of it.
Yeah.
It's because that is the backdrop to the movie. Not the way they told this story was wonderful.
Yes.
I mean, it's sad.
Yeah, very sad.
But
Spoilers.
it's wonderful. So let's kind of talk about what the movie's about. Now, there was a wrestler named Fritz von Erich in the 60s. Now, Fritz von Erich, they don't go into it, but Fritz von Erich was a guy from, I think they were from Texas. They were from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a gimmick that whole time that he was a bad guy from Germany, because I'm trying to, not get us kicked off of YouTube. He was a bad guy from Germany, and that was his whole shtick.
Yeah.
And his Iron Claw, and he did the
claw.
The claw, which is the silliest move I've ever seen in my life. But and I say this because they believed that he took his mother's name for the Von Erich part.
Yes.
His real name was Adkinson or something.
Atkinson.
So that was his father's name, but he took his mother's name for the ring, so that he could have that gimmick. Now, his mother's family, apparently they all died young. They had just kind of a bad go. I mean, not a bad life, but for the time being, for the 20s to 30s, a lot of them died young. What does young mean then? 30, But they believed that they were cursed, not because necessarily of that. He believed they were cursed because there was some really screwball fans back then in the 60s. And this wasn't covered in the movies. I'm just giving you some backstory.
Yeah.
In the 60s, that like gypsies types that he believed put a curse on him and their whole family. And, well, apparently there's something to it, because they all had a pretty tragic ending.
Except for one.
Except for one. And he doesn't have, we'll go into that.
But it was just like, from the beginning of the movie, they made it about the Von Erich curse.
Mm-hmm.
And how it kind of defined their entire family.
Their existence.
Because this, at the height of their popularity in the 70s and 80s, which is when the movie takes place,
mm-hmm.
with the four brothers, they were the wrestling family, like
in Texas.
Yeah, before before the Rhodes, before the McMahons, um, it
Before
was
the
just
Ortons, before all of that.
before the bloodline. Acknowledge me.
Geez, stop.
We won't. But it was just like they just it, and the way that the curse kind of crept its ugly head.
Mm-hmm.
It's, if you're familiar with the story of the Von Erichs, you know how it's gonna go. If you don't,
Spoiler, they all die
except
horribly,
for one.
except for one. Yeah.
And it's just one of those like, I knew of the Von Erichs. I
Mhm.
knew that they had this tragic history, but to see it in this medium of being a biopic, it was
Yeah.
beautifully told. Like it's a sad story, but to see how the family meant a lot to each other, and that was like the core of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole, story of brotherhood was amazing. Another thing that you're not getting from that movie, there was 4 Von Erichs. That's not true. There was 6.
Mhm.
There was the youngest brother that died when he was 4, I believe. 3 or 4.
I think 5.
Very
Jack
young.
Jr.
Yeah, he electrocuted himself on a trailer hitch and drowned in a puddle of water. Wow. Okay, so that's where the start of the curse comes.
Yeah.
Yikes, right? And then they don't talk about Chris Von Erich, and he was he killed himself shortly after Carrie killed himself, I think. Now he was the least talented Von Erich. He was shorter than everybody by another foot. He was not athletically gifted like the rest of them. Now, why they didn't put him in the movie is not because of that. And I listened to the director said, we just couldn't handle another death in a movie.
Wow.
Not the point. We cannot shoehorn another death.
Because it was intense because each one was different, more or less. Because you don't see the little kid. You don't see the oldest.
You don't
brother.
see that one.
But you see or hear about all the others. Like I think the first one that happened in the movie was the brother who was in Japan. I think David.
David
Von Erich.
Now they say that it was a
It was like a ruptured intestine.
It was a ruptured intestine, and that's the official report. But most wrestlers that were with him said it was a heavy drug use thing, and that's what. And he had already been married for 4 years, by the way, if you were curious. So he didn't have like a bad life. And I just want to put some of that happiness out there. He had a good life still, and honestly, I would rather they go because of choices they made than just, oh, well, crap, I'm dead. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And the movie, how the story's told, like the focus begins on Zac Efron's character, Kevin Von Erich.
He's the only one still alive, yes.
And how he's, by his father's admission, the chosen one of the Von Erich family to bring the NWA World Heavyweight Championship to the Von Erich family, because Fritz's whole thing was he was screwed over and he never got to hold the NWA World title. And he was hell-bent on one of his boys bringing that title home.
Now he could just talk to Billy Corgan and gotten it just like that. I'm just saying. Sorry, inside baseball. I apologize. Back to the movie.
And just the way, like, Fritz Von Erich put so much pressure on his boys. I felt terrible for them.
How did you feel about his ranking system? He would tell the kids every day, favorite to least favorite. He goes, these aren't set in stone. Anybody can work their way up or back down. You're like,
this happens like 10 minutes into the movie or like very early on. I'm just like, holy crap.
But here's the question. Honestly, do you honestly believe he could have been that evil and they would have loved him that much still? I think that was definitely Hollywooded up. I don't believe he could have been that evil. I
It's
really don't. I think he was a bad dad. I think he was definitely, living through his kid, doing the vicarious thing, yada yada. I don't think he could have been that bad.
I
I
mean,
really don't.
Fritz von Erich had a fantastic wrestling career
Hmm.
himself. And I think that gets overshadowed because the focus is on the boys in this movie. But I don't think Fritz von Erich was an evil person. I think he had good intentions and he just wanted his boys to be proud and to make the
Hmm.
von Erich name
And I wish they
huge.
would have focused on that a little bit more, because I hate it when they do that in movies where the dad pushed him, so he's bad. Well, it's a scale, And I
But
understand got a Hollywood, but that movie did not need another bad guy. It
you know,
didn't. It didn't
I
need
don't
any bad guys. You know what I
I
mean?
don't. I would argue and say that there weren't any bad guys, but you definitely had an antagonist because that's how he was portrayed in this movie. He was portrayed as an antagonist, and he kept
It was
pushing
one
and pushing
dimensional.
and push. Yeah. But then there's a scene where David Von Erich, you know, um, kind of takes the microphone away from Zac Efron because Zac Efron's, I guess Kevin Von Erich was terrible on the mic,
Oh, terrible.
and
He's
he
still
just
not good on the mic.
and
If you ever seen him, he's not good on the mic.
and the way he just kind of outshines his brother, that and kind of he rose up in the ranking. So it went David,
Mhm.
Kevin, Kerry, Michael.
Well, Kerry, I think, was above. But Kerry was the
Yeah,
favorite
yeah,
because
because he was the
he was going to be in
Olympian
the Olympics. And
until the Olympics didn't happen.
and that was another one. How screwed up was our country to do that?
Height of the Cold War.
But still, that. And I know Russia did it a couple years later, and then we just dominated. Okay, but either way, it's like the Olympics is the one time you have to put it away because it's not a war. It is that moment that we put it all aside. So I know
I
this is on the side, but
but
that destroyed a lot of lives.
it did clearly, and I love how because this movie is a biopic, so it's based on things that actually happened in the world, and
Hmm.
to blend the history of what happened in the 70s and 80s, especially. I think the reason why they pulled out of the Olympics that year was
Afghanistan or Russia
w-
invaded
yeah,
Afghanistan.
yeah.
Hey,
So
did that change anything? Huh? Sorry. Back to the show. Back to the
family
back to the
show,
movie.
family show, wrestling. We're
No
talking about
politics. No
wrestling.
politics. Ah! Sorry, I'm done. I'm done.
but the US in the movie pulling out of the Olympics, that kind of changed Kerry's trajectory too,
Oh
because
yeah.
he was supposed to be the Olympian. He was supposed to be the gold medalist.
Do
He
you
was
think it would have changed everything if he did the Olympics? He probably would have went into wrestling later, but I think he could have handled the pressure because he'd be a little older.
Yeah, and he would have had the experience of being, he got to be
He
an
did the
Olympian.
one thing. He's like, I'm top dog no matter what. I don't have to push everybody aside.
Yeah, so it's just like it makes me think like how would he have still been alive today if the Olympics happened, because
But all these kids were pretty self-destructive. So let's start the David thing.
yeah.
Okay, so he died of a rupture, but it was drugs. And then Kerry dies. Now Kerry, let's talk about him for a second. Okay, so Kerry was if there was a time in the 80s you could have actually watched the Texas Tornado wrestle, and that was him. At the time, he had been in a motorcycle accident and lost his foot. Now, that was because he was drinking, blah blah blah. He couldn't handle the pressure of the belt. To be fair, again, had he been older, then that wouldn't have been his only thing to lean on.
Yeah.
Maybe. Anyway, it's hard to Monday morning quarterback that. But he lost his foot, and we watched him in wrestling, and nobody knew. Nobody. It was pretty amazing. And then wrestling, as it does, says, "You're done. We're done with you. We don't have any story plans for you." And so he was doing a lot of drugs at the time, and then he self-deleted at his family farm.
Yeah.
Horrible.
That was
That broke my heart watching it. Oh.
That was I mean, it was all sad, but that was probably the saddest one because if there was hope of saving one of them,
Yeah.
that was Jeremy Allen White. I think was the perfect choice
Oh
for
my! And you
Carrie.
would not have thought that when you see him because he's a little puny dude.
Yeah,
And those dudes, how were they just like on a diet of eating like blocks of steroids? Oh my gosh, those
are
guys were
are you talking about the
ripped.
actors?
The
Like
actors.
Zac Efron. I just remember him from High School Musical being, "Oh, I'm Zac Efron," but holy crap! Like, holy crap, he was jacked. Like,
Mhm.
he looked like a professional wrestler, and I was so impressed with because they clearly committed to the roles. They clearly committed to, doing their own, wrestling. And I think if I remember the credits correctly, Chavo Guerrero Jr.
Yep.
was the one who, helped them be wrestlers.
There was a ton of like wrestling royalty that were in it and helped with everything because they are that legendary of a family.
Yeah, and I also saw like the sons of Kevin Von Erich, who were a real life tag team, were also in the movie at one point. Um, but it was just so I was impressed with their physicality and how they were able to look like pro wrestlers because there are a handful of pro wrestling movies that they don't look like pro wrestlers
Most of them,
or
let's be
they
fair,
do it
yeah.
or they do it in Injustice. Like they were actually like what this movie did great was it took you back into the 80s. I
Yeah.
loved how they did how I love how they incorporated the WCCW graphics and it
Mhm.
felt like you were watching it on
And the old
like a
school move sets. There
yeah.
was nothing like there was no Canadian destroyers or anything. It was just that maybe a pile driver. Maybe that's the finisher. And I appreciated that.
I like it was this was probably the best wrestling movie since The Wrestler. Say what you will about
I
that
have
movie.
other things to say about that one, but let's leave that one on the table.
But in terms of wrestling movies, I think this
It's at
one
least as good as Ready to Rumble.
I love that movie, but for the wrong reasons. Uh, but everything felt authentic. Everything felt
Yeah.
real, which from an actor's standpoint, that's what you want. You want to be able to tell a story coherently and make it, and you want to feel. You want to feel. And throughout this movie, you felt emotions. Most of them were sad, but even the moments where Zac Efron and Lily James, who plays his wife, like their story was sweet, and I loved their relationship and how she was kind of the first person to like give him
Mhm.
love and
Reality.
like reality. It's like
Yeah.
like she basically said your dad's a hard ass, and um she loved him, and later on in the film when he has his own children, like when they're bringing their first son home from the hospital, he says, no, his name's not Von Erich, it's Atkinson, because he was so
Afraid of the
afraid.
curse.
Yeah, and
And she
that
supported
whole
like she didn't believe it. She's like, okay, that's what you need. That's what we got.
and
And
she and
she was so good, by the way. I wanted to bring
yeah,
her up. She was in Cinderella and she was in or Sleeping one of those Disney
Downton, she was also in Downton Abbey.
Downton Abbey. That was the one I was going to mention. She was in Yesterdays, which is another. You need to watch that movie if you haven't. Oh my gosh! But I think she is going to be, and I do want to say this. I think she is going to be the next big it.
Ooh. I
I
mean,
think
she's great,
she's something special, and I think that people are finally starting to notice. Yeah,
and
I think she is going to be it.
and she's an English actress, and she did a
That can
Texas
do
accent.
English perfect.
Like maybe they'll teach me how to do accents aside from my Jersey at acting school. Like, and I think the actor who played David Von Erich was also a British actor, and I
Really,
couldn't
I could
I
see
could
that actually.
I couldn't tell, but that's
Yeah.
how good the acting was. That's how
Now
good the acting
there's
was.
two characters I didn't like in this movie, And I don't want to say it's because of their performance, because I don't think it was their performance. I think it's the way they were written. I didn't like the youngest brother. What was his name?
Michael.
I because I know the behind the scenes, and he was supposed to be more Chris. And because he was actually very athletic, and he got the brain injury, and that was it. Then killed himself. Are we seeing a pattern? But I didn't like how they gave him all these characteristics. I love the musical characteristics. I loved all that, even though that wasn't him. But if you're gonna do Chris, do Chris. But honestly, he was too close to what David was or Kevin was. He was very much an amalgamation in real life of them.
I think I disagree in the sense that I thought his character was tragically beautiful in the sense where he
did not want to be there.
he didn't want to be a wrestler. He didn't want to make the Von Erich name proud or whatever. He just wanted to be,
a rock star.
A rock star. And
that song he did, oh my gosh, that was a good song.
It was so good.
Good. So in the time, I mean, you could have heard Journey doing that or something like a band like that. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then they did a version of it during the end credits, which I thought was great.
Oh, and you're like, I'm not crying. There's onions in the air.
I mean, and I loved how they shot his death sequence, because it was just like, it kind of came out of nowhere. Like, you kind of had an idea where it was going, but when you saw it happen, you're like, oh crap. It's just like, and at that point, he was like the second one of the four brothers in the movie that died, and
third technically, but yes, oldest.
But
it was oldest. David, Michael.
Yeah, it was just like, oh my god, again. It's like, how much are they gonna go through before they say enough's enough, and just like, I'm kind of glad Kevin Von Erich got out of wrestling when he did, and they showed that too, ish, but it just shows you like,
and they showed a little bit of his kids,
and like it clearly, like, his Kevin Von Erich's character arc in this movie. I mean, Zac Efron should have been nominated for
everything.
Best
cinematography, best director. Even though he didn't do it, he was that good. And this is freaking Zac Efron. I would not nominate him for my crap. I always thought he was a talentless hack until this.
I mean, because we had decades of him being a child star from Disney.
Yeah.
And and you don't,
the Disney machine. Yeah.
You don't think of him, but the last couple of years he's been, like, okay, like, but
he was exceptional in this.
I thought he was Oscar worthy, or at least a nomination.
Which
at least a nomination.
And I'm not gonna lie, I don't give a crap about these award team where they don't know a good movie if it freaking sits on their face.
That's true. And we could do a whole other show on that.
Actually, I do want to talk about that because that's over the last like 15 years, it's just gotten terrible. Anyway, sorry. Rack up. Okay. Now, two other things I didn't like about this movie. I didn't like Mara Tierney's choices.
The mom?
Yes, I didn't like the choices. She was so unlikable and such a shrew, and she always had that.
I could see how it was one-dimensional.
Really, I'm like, okay, well, I should feel bad for you. You just lost your kids, and right now I'm just like, okay, you're getting over it.
There was one.
It's horrible to feel that way.
She had one good scene, and that was when she's like, yeah, I need a new, like, the whole I need a new dress thing. I thought that was heartbreaking, because this is, she's going through it again.
Yeah.
It would have been interesting to see if they let me do that again. I lost my mojo.
Keep going. No, you're good.
So that scene was heartbreaking, because you see her do she's basically going through it again. And while I would have liked to have seen Kerry's funeral, Jeremy Allen White, what they did instead was just,
Oh.
I cried
Mhm.
because it was just so. Yeah, but I kind of agree. I didn't really care for the mom in the film because it was very one dimensional. It was very this, she made the same choices.
Yeah.
But like again, her one good scene was, I can't wear this dress, not again, they'll notice.
Yeah.
That was
And that
heartbreaking
made you
because
fall in love with the Lily James character. She was
I
just
felt
so she took the spot as the mom for a minute.
yeah. I
And
mean,
it
I
was
fell in love with Lily James in her first scene. I'm like, wow, she's excellent.
and I think
Plus,
they made some bad editing choices because they had that thing where during the wedding Mary Tierney's all like snipey towards the Lily Jane character. See, if she tries, she can look good. Blah blah. You didn't see this before at all, so it's just like, okay, there's a lot edited out here that they should have either edited that out or kept some of that in. That did not work for me, and that's just me being okay. And then I want to talk about the final thing that I didn't like, and this is a personal choice for me. But I know it's just because Kevin had a big part to play in this. He wanted to give his brothers a happy ending. But I didn't like the they go across the river, and even though they self-deleted, they got heaven and they're happy and they're all better off. With how serious that film is, we shouldn't have seen that because I don't want to give, if this is one of those movies that could set somebody over the edge. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, well, it's not a bad ending. Does that? And I think that they weren't very responsible in that. That's me.
I didn't get that. I didn't get like. Are you saying like they kind of
They
in
gave
in
them
your?
heaven basically even though they self-deleted.
Oh, I see. I think the symbolism.
I understand the symbolism. I understand it. I just don't know if it was the right.
Um, honestly, with how the rest of the film went up until that point, you kind of needed um like a feel good, like not that it's a feel good moment by any means because of the subject, but like
But
you
they
get
made
this.
it one. Yeah.
Well, it's because it's like they're all together again,
Yeah.
type of thing, and that was like a bittersweet moment because it's like, oh, and then you remember, oh wait, they all died of questionable circumstances or by their own hand, which is
Mhm.
it's a very serious issue, even today, and I don't I don't think you could have ended the movie any other way. Honestly, I was a huge fan of the movie. Um, yeah, I don't know. I
I'd
didn't
say
get that at all.
that's a tough call. But that's just a me personal thing that is. I'm like, ew. Yeah, that would be like going to see the Chris Benoit movie and the same ending happens.
Oh my
And
god.
because he was, hey, now I'm mentally normal again. I get to hug my kid again.
that
That's about how that felt, and not to that extreme degree.
I know what you're saying, but I disagree. I disagree in terms of the movie.
But you can understand. You can understand kind of why I put that in the same.
Yeah, but honestly,
Wow, I just brought the room down.
yeah, honestly, I don't think there's any in terms of Chris Benoit. There's no redemption. There's no redemption for what he did. Um,
And we're not going to get into that because
yeah,
if you know what it is, you know what it is. If you don't look it up because it'll depress you for the rest of the month.
well, it's kind of like the same. It's kind of the same thing where it's just like the Von Erichs were these great wrestlers who met tragic ends. I mean,
Yeah.
with Chris Benoit, he was a great wrestler. So
Probably one of the greatest, to be completely honest.
So I pose this question: does the nature of how they died tarnish their legacy? Because with the Von Erichs, they're still considered one of the greatest wrestling families that's ever been in the business.
Okay, I got a hot take for you on that.
Okay.
To answer that question. If they hadn't if at least half of them had not have had a demise like that, I don't think we would be talking about them today.
Interesting.
I think that made them more famous and more legendary
because of the tragedy that surrounds.
Yes. Yeah, no one would honestly. Yes, they'd be another wrestling family. What are we talking about? Bob Orton? Randy Orton's dad? No. Are we ever going to see a movie about Randy and Bob? No.
No.
We ever going to see one about Dusty and his two boys? No, we're not.
No. You could though. You could.
Well, that if they did that, that'd just be a money grab at this point. But it would be. You understand what I'm saying on that? I think that made them legendary and made them better than they were. I don't think they were bad wrestlers. I think they were fantastic. Yada yada. I mean, you get pushed enough by Daddy, you're gonna be really good.
Yeah. It'll be
if
interesting
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes 1,000% sense. I kind of agree with that. Like, if the tragic circumstances didn't surround their family, they'd probably just be a footnote. Like, oh, they were the Von Erichs and they were this wrestling family. Kind of like how, if they ever make a movie about Vince McMahon or the McMahon family,
that'll be an interesting one.
There's or Ric Flair, if they ever make a movie about Ric Flair. I would say Ric Flair has a lot more skeletons in his closet than the Von Erichs do. But I could be wrong.
He displays them pretty prominently, though, too. I think,
like Ric Flair does.
Yes.
Yeah, and the guy who played. Speaking of Ric Flair, the guy who played Ric Flair,
did a heck of a Ric Flair.
It down to the let's go get messed up and because Ric Flair, that'll be interesting to see if they ever make a Ric Flair biopic because
they can't tell he's been dead for at least 10 years
minimum.
Yeah, I think my grandkids might talk about it.
Yeah, because having. I know we're getting a little off track, but having seen Ric Flair's retirement match back at WrestleMania 24,
one of his 14 of them, yeah,
because to be honest with you, I didn't know that much about the Von Erichs until I did some research for this movie and then watched the movie. I knew of them in my periphery because they're other great wrestlers and wrestling families that get more prominence than the Von Erichs. But in the 70s and 80s, they were the main attraction. They were the main event, pun intended. And they kind of changed the business in their own way, I suppose. But overall, if we want to talk about the film overall, this was a solid movie. It's a drama with wrestling.
Yeah, I give it an A.
And I also give it an A.
You almost never hear that from me. It was that good. And I say, in the time of, the superhero fatigue, this came out at the right time.
And A24. A24 is killing it right now.
They are killing it. There's other movies I want to talk about with them, but we'll probably get kicked off for it. But yeah, what I'm saying. They are doing good stuff. And it's nice to see a little engine that's giving us good movies regardless of everything else.
Even my wife said A24, they're putting out original stories and they aren't afraid to take risks.
Yeah.
Because, all the major studios, they play it safe nowadays and they have all these IPs that they have to, like Marvel, Star Wars, whatever.
Stop. Yeah. That's another show coming. Yeah, we got to talk about that one too.
Yeah, but kudos to A24 for taking this story and giving it to us. And I don't think another studio would have taken this.
No. Honestly, 15 years ago, it would have been with the Miramax would have pulled it off.
Yeah, probably.
And then it'd be tarnished forever and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that is a show. I am Dub. I'm here with Chris. We give this movie Iron Fist?
The Iron Claw.
Iron Claw. I can't believe I said Iron
Fist.
Claws
up.
Iron Claw. Two claws up. Thanks for joining us, guys. Check out the website, www.iheartgeek.com. Use the com. We paid extra for it. Go to the Facebook, go to the Instagram, all that fun stuff, and we will see you next time.
Bye. You remembered my name.
You have been listening to the latest episode of the iHeart Geek Show. Make sure you visit our website at www.iheartgeekshow.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you check us out on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And keep on geeking on to all of you geek rock stars.